The Poet and the Pen. Episode 5. Kate's condition worsens and a sister's plea. Kate's health took a turn for the worse. Despite the aggressive treatments, she wasn't responding well. The doctor's grim faces reflected the family's deepening despair. Grace, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders, decided to take a leave from work. The stress was unbearable, the company was faltering, and her family was falling apart. One evening, overwhelmed by a sense of hopelessness, Grace grabbed her keys and drove with no destination in mind. She navigated through the city streets, her mind a whirl of thoughts and fears. Hours passed, and she eventually found herself at an old, abandoned church on the outskirts of town. Drawn by some unseen force, she stepped inside. The dusty pews and broken stained glass windows seemed to mirror her shattered spirit. She sank to her knees at the altar, tears streaming down her face. For days, she stayed there, praying and crying, seeking solace and guidance. She felt utterly alone, but in her solitude, she found a flicker of hope. Back at home, Michael grew increasingly worried. He left countless messages, his voice filled with concern. "Grace, please come back. We need you. Kate needs you." The house felt emptier without her presence, and the tension within the family was palpable. Grace finally returned home, exhausted but with a newfound resolve. Michael was waiting for her, his face etched with relief and worry. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice trembling. "We were so worried. I needed to clear my head," Grace replied softly, her eyes weary but determined. They sat down and talked about their next steps. They both knew that the company was on the brink of collapse, with profits plummeting and stakeholders losing confidence. But more importantly, they needed to support Kate and keep the family together. "We can't do this alone," Michael said. "We need to unite the family, including Daniel and Evelyn. We need everyone to face this together." Grace nodded, her mind racing with plans. They decided to focus on creating a support system for Kate, ensuring she received the best possible care. At the same time, they would work on stabilizing the company, rallying the employees and shareholders to weather the storm. The road ahead was daunting, but Grace and Michael knew they had to persevere. The stakes were too high, and the consequences of failure too devastating. With a renewed sense of purpose, they prepared to face the challenges head-on, determined to keep their family intact and their company afloat. Like and follow as we continue with the story of Rhythms of Life in The Poet and the Pen.